Hey guys, it's Megan. Today I'm going to tell you how I read 100 books last year in hopes that, I don't know, maybe it'll help you get the motivation or just figure out like how to read 100 books a year. I don't know if I necessarily recommend trying to read more than you want to read per year because I'm going to tell you some of the cons too, but let me tell you the situation first. So I have a full-time job. Obviously, I'm a librarian. My hours, I don't get home from school till around like 4:30, so it's like kind of late in the day, and I go to bed early. I go to bed at like 9:30 or 10. I call that decently early. So I don't have a huge amount of time in the day for reading. I also have now an almost 3-year-old. So last year, a 2-year-old for the entire year. So there's very little time to read when I get home, unless he goes to, except when he goes to bed, but then I'm tired. So let me tell you how I still managed to read 100 books. I forgot that last year I also did a lot of working out because I was trained for my PR in a 10K, which I got, and then I trained for my PR in a 5K, which I got, like at one in May and one in November. So there was a lot of training and lots of running, and I spent a lot of my free time doing that. First, I know everybody's going to suggest audiobooks, which I obviously highly recommend as well. So audiobooks is primarily how I consumed books last year. I would say 90 of the 100 books I read were audiobooks. I know some people don't say that they're reading. My sister-in-law, I still say it's reading, or at least consuming the story just in a different format. But I used Libby, my library app. Once I discovered that, it was a game changer. When I see readers who don't know about Libby, I'm like, what are you doing? Let me show you right now. And their mind is always blown. I have so many holds on Libby. I have multiple different library cards that I have on there from different places. I also have access to our school's ebook and audiobook system, which is for young adult literature, but I still can use that if I need it. And then of course Hoopla as well, but you can only do so many books per month on that one. I think it's 5. One big tip I had is to get both the physical or ebook, either one, and the audiobook version of the same book. Because if you do that, for example, for myself, in the evenings when I was really sleepy and I wanted to read, but I was literally falling asleep trying to read my book, if I had the audiobook to read it to me, I'd put my headphones in and I would just follow along on the page. So then my eyes weren't closing as I'm just sitting there in the silence trying to read. Or if my husband was doing something kind of noisy and playing a video game, I wasn't getting distracted because I had my headphones in. I couldn't really hear it anyway. So having multiple formats was amazing. Some books I actually had the physical ebook and audiobook of the same book. That way if I wanted to read the physical book, I could. But if it was dark, if it was nighttime and I wanted to have my lights really down low in my room, and I didn't want to have the big lights on to read, then I could use my ebook. So yeah, I'd have 3 copies of the same book. I also did stop listening to a lot of other stuff. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts, but I kind of got tired of listening to those anyway. I listened to the Rooster Teeth podcast for a long time. I listened to some roller coaster podcasts, and those were pretty much the 2 main ones I listened to. And I eventually just kind of stopped because I kind of got out of, I didn't really care. The Rooster Teeth people, all the main people kind of left, so I didn't really care anymore. And then the roller coaster podcast, I just don't go to theme parks as much anymore now that I have a 2-year-old, although he can ride roller coasters now and he loves them. So at least there's that. So maybe when I get back into going to theme parks again, I'll start listening to those podcasts again. Every now and then I still listen to random YouTube videos, of course. So I would break up my audiobook listening with YouTube videos, but primarily when I would wake up in the mornings when I'm getting ready, I would just pop in my AirPods and start listening to the audiobook as soon as I would wake up, and I'd have a good hour probably of listening time in the mornings before school as I'm getting ready and driving to work, all that good stuff. And then the evenings, probably around at least 30 to 45 minutes of listening time. And that's not counting if I was doing something else, if I was cooking dinner, doing laundry, whatever it was, I would listen. And on the weekends, I felt I had even more listening time. Also helps, another tip, of course, is that I would speed up my books. Now, not everybody wants to do this. My husband thinks it sounds like a crazy person because he walks in and he's like, what are you listening to? Because it's going blah, 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 blah. But I swear by listening to them faster because I can just get through them so much faster. Obviously, I can't stand the long pauses between sentences. Obviously, I talk really fast, so I'm fine with listening to it fast. So I would listen to them anywhere from 1.5 to 1.75 to 2 times speed. Honestly, it depended on the book. Usually when I was first starting out with a new book, I would do 1.5 times speed. As the book progressed, I could do 1.75. If it was kind of boring and slow, I would do 2 speed. The only thing was it kind of also depended on the genre. So if it was a fantasy book, which I'll talk about in a minute too, I had trouble listening to it on faster speeds. If it was a denser book basically, or had more character names or places or things to try to remember, but like if it was a really straightforward plot, like a romance or something, which I listen to very few romances, but like it was just somehow really straightforward, then I could listen to it a lot faster. And throughout the book, as I got more comfortable with everything going on, I could speed it up. I also DNF'd like crazy, which helped me get through a lot of books because I didn't push through books I didn't like until November and December, when I realized I was so close to reading 100 books that became my goal. And if I DNF'd any, I wasn't going to make it. So I had to read books like God Killer by Hannah Witten or Hannah Kaner, whoever it's by. I was so bored by the end of that book because I just made myself push through, and I should not have. So I would recommend DNFing at your heart's content. I did finally just want to mention some cons, because yes, there were cons of reading 100 books. One is that yes, I pushed through at the end. I should have DNF'd some, and the pressure of trying to read that many was just too much. So now I have no goals for this year. Like my reading goal was 1 book on Goodreads, so that was good. Also, I realized I could not read dense fantasy, especially like, high fantasy set in another world where I had to learn all kinds of new names and places, and there were maps that you couldn't see when it was an audiobook, or an appendix or a glossary or whatever, family trees. Like I couldn't get all that, and so therefore I couldn't quite follow along with some of those fantasy books that I wound up kind of DNFing. So I will definitely try them again. Like I tried Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, and I was confused, and I was like, oh, I should just probably try this again another time. So Babel by R.F. Kuang, not that it was like hard to follow, but it was just really, really dense. Like the word choice and everything made it like I needed to listen to it slower, and probably physically and stuff as well. So I would say that not being able to read any fantasy definitely hurt me too, because I wasn't able to read my favorite genre. And not like completely, I could read some, but I really have so many big series I want to start. And I think this year I'm going to be able to do that because I can not have to worry about how many I'm reading. So if it takes me a month to read 1 fantasy book, so be it. But I will say it did help me branch out and try new genres. Because I couldn't read fantasy, I was able to read more like mystery, thrillers, horror, even some random contemporary books, romance books, memoirs. I probably would never have picked up some of those memoirs that I did, like Paris Hilton's and Britney Spears, and who was the other one? I don't know. There was another one at some point. Oh, the Draco Malfoy, Tom Felton. Yeah, there we go. So hopefully this gained some insight for you into how I read 100 books. I don't recommend picking, like I said, a certain number because that got too stressful by the end, but it was kind of fun, and I'm glad I did it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down below if you have any other tips. Like I said, mine's all audiobook based, so sorry, because I know that's like everybody's tip, but especially when you have small children, that's really kind of the only way to consume books. As my child gets older, I think I'll be able to read a lot more physically. Like maybe I'll take him to a practice or do whatever he's into. Like while I'm waiting on him, I can read my book physically. But I still will always now have a soft place in my heart for audiobooks. And I swear, I used to hate audiobooks, I promise. So I understand if you're that person, because I would almost rather not read a book than listen to an audiobook. That's how bad I hated them. But I learned to love them, and it was the only way. I think I did a video actually before about audiobook listening tips, like how to get into audiobooks, how to learn to love them. So I can link that down below. But you just have to really find a book that really truly interests you, and not be afraid to rewind if you need to. Like if I realized I wasn't paying attention, even this morning I was like, oh, rewind like 5 minutes because I wasn't paying attention, and slow down when I needed to, or whatever it was. I'll stop rambling. I will talk to you guys again later. Bye.